We wrote in the copy, like, experience every emotion with the cola Pop Creemees. The origin of that phrase is a couple of years ago, Olivia Rollins had a cat named Walter, and she took a picture of Walter in a very funny pose. And Walter went viral on our company Slack. He was made into an emoji. The emoji was used everywhere. And then Joe licensed Walter's likeness to put on our boxes. So if a store orders our books, they'll get Walter on the box. And we made an enamel pin. Like, what is this cat saying? And we came up with the phrase, experience every emotion. Like when your book came out, we were like, this is like the Walter of books. Like this is like, well, the cat was like in this pose that could be interpreted in so many different ways.
It was really fun. I redrew Walter as the enamel pin, and it was actually like one of the more difficult challenges because it's like such an expressive pose that like it's actually really hard to recreate because you're like you can't really screw up like the smile or like the eyes or any of it, you know, like. And so this gave me new respect for your work.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so Walter is a black and white cat, just as the important thing.
Oh yeah, more in common. Famously, also amongst our staff, you drew a portrait of Elly and I, which
as wiggly people.
Many people on our staff have literally squealed to me about how like overjoyed they were to like open the book and find that, because you know, like all people that don't work on the book don't know that that's in there until the book comes out, and then they're like, oh wow.
That was so cool. I mean, I don't know if people know this, but when we have someone do a graphic novel, if they're game for it, which you really were game, Desmond, thank you. We have them like write out all of our copyright page and then like basically duplicate all of the stuff we normally put in the book. And yeah,
it was so fun to do, and I'm glad you brought it up because I did have that question of like, I knew I drew both of you. Was that okay?
so awesome. It would be cool if we could put that on a sticker.
Yeah.
Was that your idea or Sarah's idea?
It was not. I was asked to do it.
Okay.
So I forget if it was Elly or Sarah, but no, I was 100% game, and it was fun to do, and I'm glad that you both of you like it.
How awkward would that be?
Yeah. That'd be.
I was like, wait, my arms aren't really that long.
Is this how you see me?
A much darker conversation. Yeah.
Yes.
Wait, you see me as a person with emotions?
Hi, I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 28 years.
I'm Elly Blue, the vice president of Microcosm. We started this podcast to share what we've learned with newer publishers, so you can learn from our mistakes. Or maybe you just want to learn about the publishing industry.
This week, we welcome special guest Desmond Reed, author of the brand new Horrors of Being a Human, a Cola Pop Creemees comic, which is in fact a sequel to a previous book. Desmond, who are you and what informs your work in comics?
And what are you doing here? Just kidding.
How did you get in this call?
I hacked in. Good work. Well, my name is Desmond. I have been an artist for most of my life, but it was during the pandemic that I really started focusing and working hard to make books. And I think what informs my work, everything I do, it's a little bit of like a Trojan horse type thing where it's drawn very like goofy and silly, but it deals with some serious stuff, deals with some sad stuff. And so that's kind of my goal, to talk about serious things, but have it be palatable through a goofy lens.
I like that. That's a great description that we probably should have put on the back of the book. No, I think, you know, the thing that I really like about your style of art is like, you know, I was kind of struggling a little when writing the marketing blurb because I was like, this is a book about so many things. Like, this is kind of a music book. It's about a band, a fictional band. It's a graphic novel. It's also a book about mental health. It's also a book about like, it's fiction, but it's like this like distilled fiction that's like just about feelings, you know? Like there's stories that happen, but they're like short little vignettes, and each of them is like punches you in the face with a feeling, but not always like in a violent way. I don't know. Like when you were putting the book together, like what was sort of the like like, who was your ideal audience for it? Like, what did you want your reader to get out of it?
This is going to be a real weird answer, but it really was just I was trying to talk about the human experience. So I'm really trying to reach anyone as a human, I guess. I was excited to work with you guys because I feel like it's a comic, but it's kind of not really in that comic world. Like I was not trying to reach a comic audience or anything like that. Like, my inspiration for this, it's real feelings that come from living and past experiences. And so that's what I wanted to express, just so other people could sort of, if they're going through the same feeling, work through that but with enough distance of it being through like a fictional group of people. And so who's the market? I don't know. Everybody, which does not help, which I'm sure doesn't help the marketing, but I'm sorry for that.
Well, and it's kind of like the thing that struck me is like the specificity of these stories is a little too exacting, that like there had to be real world inspiration.
Yeah. 100%. So much of this came from just my real life. And, I don't want to say it's nonfiction because you kind of have to alter things for it to just get a better structure and sometimes even just get a better ending. A lot of things in life, you have this weird experience and then it just ends and there's no conclusion. It's just sort of like, whoa, what was that? And so, channeling it into a real, channeling it into more of like a story. But I will say some of it is just pure fiction. A lot of it, it's just sort of a weird feeling that would be inside. And I try to kind of reverse engineer a story so that the reader would feel that feeling, even though they weren't necessarily experiencing the exact same thing I was. Is that a weird thing to say? Am I real weird? Okay.
No, that's like what literature is supposed to do, man.
Good.
Hopefully.
So your story, so you have 2 books now following the adventures and histories and inner lives of members of a band called the Pop Creemees. And there's a bunch of different characters and they each have their own personality. Is this like sort of like Pixar's Inside Out, where each of them is like expressing a part of you, or what's?
It's so funny that you say that. I did not plan that, but yes. And you are not the first person to mention Inside Out. I've never seen Inside Out. I got to see that because it just kind of keeps coming up. But yeah, I mean, just almost accidentally, I was trying to just make like a well-balanced group of different personalities, but it's hard. I don't know. Like they sort of started out like, oh, I'll base this on kind of my friend and this and it's all me. Yeah, it's all me. Just different moods.
It's like Inside Out for adults who have no problems.
Right. And you might, it might be like that moment where like you watch Inside Out and then like the universe inverts because it's too much, to like how you process your own art. But so maybe don't like rush into that one for the sake of the universe. But so you're like a very positive disposition, like you have a lot of enthusiasm. And your characters are not that way. So is that like what's going on there?
Yeah, I've started going to therapy. I don't know. It's actually, I wasn't even a joke. That's serious. But I think I mean, I started making these because I couldn't really talk about this stuff. It's hard for me, and I think some of it. I mean, it's just nobody wants to be a bummer, and I think part of it's honestly probably like kind of toxic masculinity of like I don't want to show this to anybody. I had like a few rough years leading up to the pandemic, and during those rough years, I got it out, just whatever that bad energy is, just by like working real hard at my job and going out a lot and everything. And it was when everything shut down and like oh, the bars aren't going on and like my nothing's going on at work. It had to go somewhere, and so. That's when I started working on this. That was kind of the impetus of it, of just having too many things going on inside. And like this has to come out somehow, because it's obviously not coming out in my day-to-day life.
Smile and sunny disposition. It's true. Well, before we got on this call, you were speaking enthusiastically and positively, as you are wont to do, about the sort of production of the book, and I would love to know sort of like what is your experience with print production of comics, and maybe Joe as our sort of head of creative and production department, and I would love to know like what decisions went into making this book the way that it is. Like, how is it different from other books? How does it differ from what your expectations were? This is a somewhat informed, rambling question, but run with it.
Yeah.
And
No,
what is your opinion on natural paper versus white?
Ooh, and now the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah, this is why we're here.
yeah. No, it's funny. Making comics is really weird because a lot of the time, most of the time, you're doing it on your own, and so you have to kind of learn about like papers and how things are printed and what's easier and everything. And so I've always done black and white just because it's cheaper. I actually enjoy how it looks, and so that's what I did on this. So I guess all I can really do is compare it because this is the second book compared to the first book. But with the first book, I was trying to do straight black and white. I love how this book came out as well. But it's pure white paper. I really like it. So for the second book, I wanted to make it a little bit more complex. And so I started using a lot of patterns and, just different techniques. I actually started using, like security envelopes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I use for the patterns here.
Oh, cool.
I wondered about that. So I used those a lot in a book I did a long time ago called Make-A-Zine.
No way.
And then when I saw that in your book, I was either like, Desmond is either very into drawing intricate patterns or has the same security envelopes that I do.
That's amazing. Once you get into it, you start recognizing the patterns. Yeah, like I'll get something and I'll be like, oh, what's the pattern on this? And like, oh, I already got that one, But the difference between the white and the kind of the off-white printing, it just looks so, I don't know. I feel like the off-white makes it look a lot more kind of complex and warmer. Again, I like both, and I think both have their strengths, but I just really, really like how this book came out. A lot of the decisions were, obviously I drew it all and everything. A lot of the decisions were my own, but the production landed on you guys, and oh my God, I cannot be happier. This just came out so well. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's fantastic. Yeah. And so maybe I should tell you now, spoiler alert, off-white paper, especially cream or natural paper, is pretty controversial with cartoonists who tend to prefer a stark white stock. And I don't know quite. I feel the natural looks nicer because it's a little more relaxed.
Yeah.
Like it's like you don't need to really be like, hey, eyeballs, there's a stark contrast here.
No, I'm with you. Yeah.
But many people have, like, upon seeing it, they're like, when the book reprints, can I have it on white paper? And I'm like, that is so fascinating. That and like sometimes if the art is like has enough grays or whatever in it, like there is maybe a point to that, but on the whole, I'm kind of like, this is
Big fan over here. Yeah, no, I think my only thing, now I'm getting real particular, I hate glossy paper. That's my only thing. I just don't like the gloss. I love that this is not glossy, it's natural. No, I like the off-white. Yeah, I think it came out, it could not be better. I'm so happy with how this came out.
nice.
So 10 years ago when I first started working for Microcosm, we never even used black ink. All the ink would be in a Pantone color. So like,
Wow.
everything would be brown and wavy or something.
I may never live this down.
I know. Well, I mean, it was great, and it was kind of our policy. And it became my job very quickly to sort of argue with authors about it and convince them that this was, a cooler thing to do and a better way to do things. And then as soon as I kind of had everybody on board, then the printer was like, "Hey, you could save $1,000 per print run by printing black and white."
They won't even do it anymore. It's like they refuse to wash out the inks. Yeah.
Interesting.
But that was a cool time in our printing history. What can I say? maybe the time of Pantones will come around again. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's funny how much of this is very technical, and I did this because I wanted to make art, and boy, I just got like a master's degree and just sort of like printing and like, distributing, it's wild.
Have you published this online? Is there a place people can go online and see your art?
So back to the pandemic, the way I kept my mind active is I did a page a day. And and I continued that for about 5 years. And so
Wow.
everything that ended up in this book is somewhere in there. So if you scroll back, if you have a lot of time on your hands and can just scroll back on my Instagram, you'll be able to piece together, some version of the book. But yeah, I don't know, that was always how I did it. It kind of gave me it's good to have a deadline, so when you give yourself a deadline of a page a day, it's funny to go back where like the first ones that look like scribbles, because like I gotta do this, I have a day to do this, but you just keep doing it, and it got better. And that's not me complimenting myself. That's me kind of almost being horrified that like, how did that even happen? I don't even remember the switch happening, but it's just, you do it every day. Practice makes perfect. I think I just made that up. Yeah.
We should use that for something else.
Yes.
I love that. So when you would do a page a day and you would post them on Instagram?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
When did you do you draw by hand, or do you draw electronically, or
all by hand? Yeah, I think I've been told before that I should try an iPad. That would be a lot easier. But no, I used to do it like totally by hand. And with the I keep putting it on screen. With this book, I definitely kind of leaned more on Photoshop, like especially to just clean stuff up and put patterns in. And it took a little bit longer, but I'm really happy with how it came out. But with the first book, it was all like, I think I used, like I cleaned up mistakes with white paint. I did it all. Like I was a real purist. And I think the only thing I did in Photoshop was just fill in the black tones. And I felt bad about that because I was like, I should be coloring this in. What am I doing? But yeah, no, with this, yeah. But mostly analog. I think most people would consider that, analog or whatever.
Right. Yeah, there was a point in time like 20 to 25 years ago where like a cartoonist cleaning up in Photoshop was like controversial, and now it's just part of like the process, whereas like they used to like confess to it in hushed tones in the corner of the convention room and be like, I clean up my line work, and then they would be like, but it kind of makes it easier if you're going to do a fill to have just some clean, tight corners. I'm like, I mean, I don't,
it's some of the limitations are kind of unhealthy, where it's sort of like, all this technology exists, I'm not going to use it for reasons unknown. But I also kind of feel like that's where creativity comes from, when you kind of put set limitations and kind of have to figure things out and like, okay, I got to fix this by, pasting this on this and everything. So I have mixed feelings on it, but yeah, I tried. I mean, the like 80% of it is just drawing. I just enjoy that. I don't know.
Sorry, I've had to keep my mic off because the dog is intermittently barking, but he's calmed down a little bit now. What the dog would like to know is who is walking by our house, and also who, like, you say your book is for everyone. I have more questions about audience and marketing because that's my obsession. Like, who are the people that come to you and are like, this book really resonated with me? Are there patterns there? Is there like a kind of self-selected audience there?
That's a really good question. And I would like to, again, it's that thing of like making comics. You have to all of a sudden be like a marketer, a printer, the whole thing. I think I'm maybe a little bit weak in marketing. So this is a good, I think this is a good road to go down. I think it's hard to think of demographic. I mean, it resonates with adults. I think that it talks about, not because of it's like inappropriate or anything, but I think it just talks about feelings that you have when you're adult and you're looking back and you have the perspective of looking back at your childhood and sort of the existential view of, where am I going and everything. So I think that that's a part of it. I think that, I don't know, maybe skews a little bit more towards women. I think I just sort of in anecdotal numbers of going to shows. I think those are, but I've had a lot of guys as well. It seems to resonate with people who I think just kind of have those feelings and are open to it. Like I've gotten a lot of. It feels really good to get these messages. I've gotten a lot of messages on Instagram or people, catching me at shows again and just kind of saying like this story in particular or this character resonated with me. And I had the story that I'm really pushing in this book is a story called Memories, and it talks a lot about addiction. And I actually don't have a lot of experience with that, but I remember I got just a really long note from someone saying, "This, you just wrote my life. Like, this is what happened," and I think it meant a lot to him. It meant a lot to me. So I think, I don't want to say people who have gone through some stuff, but I think I think that would make them probably more interested in reading about this kind of thing.
Right. So, when we have a guest star trying to steal the limelight from you. Yeah.
Please do.
So I have I had a reunion with a bunch of my old friends yesterday. I'm in Cleveland, and a lot of them have like gone through patterns of addiction throughout their lives, and and it's like, so similarly, it's like I felt like that like resonated really well, like you hit the notes, and this is kind of something that we're well, I guess Elly and I love to recall a story that we ran into many years ago. So there's an industry event called Comics Pro, which is where publishers pitch retailers in a roundtable format. So like we would sit down with 6 or 8 retailers and show them our books, and then they would like have a moment to interact with us and ask questions. And it's actually a really cool format. And a lot of the books that we publish are for women. And at the end of one of the pitching sessions, one of the buyers literally said, "Well, these books are great and all, but like I'm in a college town and these are all for women." And I'm like, "Is there no women in college?"
Yikes. Yeah.
Or are they like not allowed in your store, or what's going on here?
Yeah. Can you elaborate? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, since everything you said made no sense, I'm going to need more information. And it was like, but to him, it was just like, like, why would I sell these books? Because who would I possibly sell them to? Like, comics are for men. What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Comics is for men too, apparently. He may have been visiting from the 1930s.
Right.
Someone was telling me they were researching the history of comics, and the original comics were specifically for women, and the original comics readers were women.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. Even being antiquated is no excuse. I'm sorry.
He wasn't antiquated enough, I think, was the problem.
It's funny, the connotations of comics, because like as I said before, I don't really have a comics DNA. Like I just really like TV shows and movies, and I just don't have the patience to like I think in another life I would have gone into animation or something, but comics is such an immediate way to tell a story. And yeah, it's funny to me to hear that sort of the connotations of sort of like, this isn't for comics across the board or for like a certain age group or whatever, but it's really it's just words and pictures, and if you pick something up from that, I think anybody can.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with this idea of comics. It took me a long time. It actually took working at Microcosm with the kinds of comics that Joe acquires to like make me come around to appreciating the comics as an art. Because like, I grew up, there was a box in our basement that was filled with my dad's comic books from his childhood. And some of them were like passed down to him from older cousins. And it was all like Prince Valiant and some superheroes and like Scrooge McDuck. And it was like it was like all kind of like, there wasn't really anything to relate to for me in them.
Yeah.
Like they were fun to read, but they weren't like, I wasn't getting out of them what I got out of like reading a novel, which is what I preferred. And like, I feel like the way that the comics that we have the honor of publishing, including yours and, they're all about like deeper things. Like it's an art form that you can use to say anything and tell any story, but there's this whole culture built up around, the ancestors of Prince Valiant. Yeah. I have to say, Prince Valiant ones were snoozers, though. Like nothing happened in those.
No, definitely. I am so like alternative comics. There is such a range of what people are doing. Like I don't love them all, but like when one hits, it's just like, oh man. It literally, I literally just see it as just pictures, words, do what you want, and the range of books that you get out of that. I find it exciting. I don't know. It's fun. It's sort of like a niche of a niche of a niche, but I don't know why. Like it's people expressing themselves in such a pure way. Maybe I'm biased because I'm making them, but yeah, I don't know. I'm into it.
Right.
Can you like trace your comics ancestry, like who inspired you, and or who are you doing the anti of?
It's yeah, I kind of have like a weird so I think like a lot of people my age, I was really into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and that obviously started as a comic. And I'm in Massachusetts, born and raised, and my dad brought me to so the people who made the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are from Northampton, Massachusetts, and they had a museum. So when I was a kid, I was really lucky to just be like 40 minutes away from this, and so my dad would bring me and my sister there, and so that was a huge, that was like, hey, this comic thing. My dad was always into comics, and when I got older, I got into the X-Men, and then that's But I think like when I really think, and this is like a kind of a deep cut, an actual comic that I was into that influenced me in the future. Anyone familiar with Sam Keith and the Max?
Wow. Uh-huh.
That was a sort of, again, I call my stuff like a Trojan horse comic. That was a Trojan horse comic because it was a superhero comic that dealt with really intense trauma, and it was a very different type of thing. And it, as a little kid, it blew my little mind, and I think it stuck with me. And so I would say that would be really the direct link for me.
Wow. Yeah. So I learned comics. I mean, like I grew up, I'm pushing 50. So I grew up like Harvey Pekar actually like taught me comics when I was a kid. And which helped because then I wasn't like reading DuckTales or garbage. And I knew, but then it was weird because then the comics that were being published at the time were pretty throwaway. That was like Superman died shortly thereafter, and Batman's back was broken, and you're kind of like, who cares? But because it was, he taught me that like Superman was like invented in Cleveland, like in a zine, and it was like made by the creators, not by DC Comics. And I was like, oh, that's like actually really cool and interesting. And then, and I think that probably like informed more than I realized it until like I was in my 40s, to be honest. And so a lot of it was leading into a moment a few months ago where a reporter from Publishers Weekly called and was like, so I see that you're publishing 4 comics about mental health at once this summer. What's that about? And I'm like, well, I would have just called them 4 comics.
Yeah.
But, and then, and it hadn't even occurred to me what her point was until that she pointed it out. And then I was like, oh no, these are just like the comics that we're doing. And it's like, so I guess that's like to your point, it's like it's all point of view.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess that's our editorial point of view.
Yeah. I don't mean to sound like I'm sucking up. I am so glad we worked on this together. I feel like we're so aligned on this.
Yeah, it's a good match. It's a good match. I'm glad that we found each other.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it's refreshing just to hear this because like I'm in the comics world. I'm on the ground floor and everything. And just like, like the Superman, like I've been talked at quite a bit about like sort of like big moments in superhero stuff. And sometimes I say I have no idea what you're talking about. And sometimes I just nod and pretend I know what they're talking about. But no, I enjoy it. I like that this is the background to it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then it's interesting too, because like, like one of those, like we did a graphic adaptation of Unfuck Your Brain. So like that one like makes a little bit more sense that it like would be notable because it's like already a best-selling book, and like we went to great lengths to have it adapted. Like it wasn't something that, just was like pitched to us. But like the rest of them, I was just, we did Hardcore Happiness, which is like a graphic novel, like it has like a lot of similarities to your book, honestly, but it's like nonfiction, and it's like very real, and there's like no mistaking that. Well, I guess you could mistake that, but you'd be having to like willfully look at it through the lens of comics rather than the lens of reading to not believe it's real. And then, and then we did the new Return to the Snake Pit, which is like kind of always a book about, I mean, also very real, know, in its own way, and like dealing with difficult things. And but I guess it's just, I never really like, and that was kind of the thing that was always pushed on me, was like this idea that like it's like how it's goofy and should be marginal that most comic books feature people wearing tights that are like doing like unrealistic dramatic things, and what is that really about?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is that really about? That's a great question. What is the actual meta story? What is the meta text?
Like, it's almost like professional wrestling, and like once you take a few steps back from it, you're like, this is very not heterosexual and very not like quite what you would think the audience would be receptive to.
Yeah. Huh.
It's interesting. Can I ask you guys a
Yeah.
question? Are you
Yes.
do you think you're going to be publishing more comics?
We do. Let's see. So we're a little picky.
Yeah.
In as as you do as publishers of, this is our 30th year, so you get a lot of and so like, and it's funny because the wisdom in comics, and I hope this doesn't rub you the wrong way as a professional,
I'm sure it won't.
is that you prioritize art over story, and I prioritize story over art.
Yes.
And like, I'm really like, I want the substance of the book to win the day, and I do not care if the person like is learning to draw while they draw that book, because like they will have a more heartfelt narrative, and that really rubs people wrong, because like in comics you're really taught that you have to like do the sketchbook and really like hone your craft, and then you're ready to draw a book. And really like writing often takes a backseat to doing all that, that you're never like pushed on this like how to pace a narrative, and like what is a story worth telling, and like what will resonate with your audience, and like who is your audience, and like, do you have an audience? And and so like I'm really looking at it from that. And we do so I mean, it was really cool that you came to us kind of right at the same time. So to do four at once was like really a coincidence, because it had been a number of years. I want to say, I mean, I think Ellie would probably remember better than I can, because it's been a while, but we used to do comics every year. And then I feel like there was just a few years where we weren't getting good pitches, or, I mean, and by good pitches, I mean like the kind of books that we would publish. Like, we do get a fair amount of like, I drew a superhero comic book and we're like, I think you are lost, and then, or, you have to like ask a few probing questions to be like, what kind of superhero? Is it like a superhero at like managing complicated interpersonal situations, or like what is going on exactly with our protagonist here? But so like, we're absolutely looking for it. It's just more about like, we're not Fantagraphics or whatever, even in the sense of like, we would really be like, what is the book about, would be our first question. Not like, like, we don't even care if it's like a debut. We don't care if, again, if the person is like learning artistry. We care more that like the person has something to say.
Yeah.
And that they can work with us editorially.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's a good point, Ellie.
Desmond, we fixed some typos in your book, and that's it. Like, that is one of the books of any genre, of any kind, that we've done the least editorial on. Like, it came to us ready to go.
I feel like my soul just left my body. Thank you for saying that.
Like, there's probably, I can think of like maybe 2 other books that had that little like development needed by us.
Thank you so much for saying that. I take writing very seriously. I worked at a law firm for like a decade, and I learned so much writing there. So you're saying that, I'm so happy, even knowing that because I remember the typo. It was
right, yeah, there weren't even that many typos.
I'm losing sleep over it. Yeah.
But now that you mention it, the first author to ever turn in a like essentially print ready book with 2 typos in it also worked at a law firm.
Okay, now that
So
maybe this is where we should be looking for our authors.
right. So any law firm employees out there, great for pitching us
Yeah.
books. Just make them about something.
Genuinely, the stuff I learned, it was a different kind of writing, but like good writing is good writing. And so like I think a lot of the fundamentals I learned was a whole different thing. But yeah,
Can you walk us through that? Like, how do you learn to write at a law firm?
It's sort of similar to writing comics in the sense that you're trying to communicate something in the most simple way possible. If you write more, that's bad. You're trying to like get your point across. And I think that my big thing, I remember one of the attorneys pulled me aside and said like, hey, it's good, but you can develop this more. I was putting a lot of extra words in, like I think as a person, I speak very passively. Like, I think we should maybe go, but writing that way just makes it confusing, So I think that was a big thing. I think, working on outlines was sort of a big thing that I learned at the law firm. I didn't do a lot of like legal writing. I don't know if you can really take much from that, but like sort of the in-between stuff. It just taught me how to be more concise. That's the word I'm looking for. Concise.
And that is, that's what you need. And you also need to like make sure your point is so clear.
Yeah.
You don't ever want to mistake your meaning to be one sentence instead of the other sentence being the most important sentence.
100%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We do these decks, like card decks, and I feel like that is like the authors of those, they have to be the tightest at being concise and clear. And I'm like, it's like, I feel like that would be the best way to learn. I mean, other than working at a law firm, apparently, the best way to learn to write, because you're like, I guess at a law firm, like you cannot mince your meaning, like it's the whole thing.
Every word matters. So yeah, you have to be very selective as to what you use. And also working in a law firm, you learn deadlines. That's
right.
Time is money.
Yeah.
Wow, I never thought about that. Right.
Yeah, this is great intel.
Yeah, scout out the law firms. I think there are probably some writers in there.
Like little notices up on their bulletin boards.
They'll be sending us authors from there.
Boy, kindred spirits. To go back to your point about the writing being important, I remember somebody handing me a zine a long time ago, and it was very clear that they were not like they're just starting out, like as far as the art was concerned. And I think it was just such an honest portrayal. I think they were an ice cream delivery person for a while, and it always, I don't know who they are. I don't know if I don't think they were professional. It was stapled together, like it was clearly homemade. It always stuck with me way more than professional stuff that was handed to me, because it was just an honest, really well written story. I think just kindred spirits, but I feel like that's so important. That's the most important thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So why comics then? Like, you're a storyteller. Why is comics your method of doing that?
I don't know. I think I just sort of fell into it. There are so many people in my life that were into comics. I always liked to draw when I was a kid, and I never thought I was even doing comics. But looking back, I was like, well, I did the comic for my college newspaper. I did comics when I was a kid and, had no worries. That was what I did with my free time. And, I did that. Like, it was just sort of always there. And I've thought about like, should I just like try writing or doing something like that? But I think I'm ruined at this point. Like, my brain's just sort of like, well, yeah, but what would I draw there? And like, it's just sort of in there. And again, it kind of came about because I got a fast brain, gang. And I get a lot of stories and I can't I wanted to be an animator, but it takes so long. You have to involve other people. This is the easiest, fastest way to just get kind of this nervous energy out. So yeah, I think I just have to stick with it, for better or for worse.
Right.
Yeah, we hope you do.
When I think you had mentioned the animation and like your illustration style would lend so well to animation. And,
all the wiggly lines.
Yeah.
And everybody, I was going to make the joke earlier that the only reason it's fiction is because your arms aren't that long. But
and I have bones. Yeah.
Wait, that much hair.
But it does seem like it would be and then it would be the interesting question of like age range and like things like that really would be like completely fascinating to be in that boardroom meeting for. But we've done like a lot of that kind of, and most of that stuff, like it kind of goes nowhere but you like, you can like, you sell the rights and then the thing gets killed by the time like the pilot has been drawn by you. But the people that I have known that have worked in animation, like they just are like, yeah, you work an 18-hour day, 5 days in a row, and then that's just like what's expected of you. And I was like, I guess that's kind of the only way that you can like get things done on, speaking of deadlines. But I was also like, yeah, and that it just takes a certain kind of person that, like, I know a lot of cartoonists that's like sort of the dream.
Yeah.
And I've known a lot of cartoonists that like basically when they need to get a job, that's like that's the job version of cartooning, versus like it would be very difficult to make a living drawing books,
Yes. Yeah.
You'd have to just be very, very lucky. So I don't know. So like, what do you picture success looking like for your work? Like what is your goal?
I've thought about that a lot, especially recently. Yeah, I've been doing this for like 5 years. I'm really happy that I've been able to publish 2 books that it was just completely my idea, and completely like nobody went in and said like change this. Nobody did, I feel unbelievably fortunate. I think about myself as like a kid, thinking like if only I had a book out and everything, and now here we are. I think that there is, nobody's making money off comics. Nobody's like, there are a select few, but like 99.999 aren't. And so within that realm, dare I say it? I think I might be successful.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. But like, so what do you want to accomplish though?
Yeah.
Like,
I think, I want to hit as many people as possible with this. I think for a long time, my goal was for this to just kind of get picked up as like someone to take a swing at animating it. I'm not an animator, but I think I've put out stories. I have characters. These characters started off way, way, way back. I was a big fan of Adult Swim, the adult animation block. And so I made these characters and I had a whole pitch. They used to have a pitch show that you could call into. And I actually pitched to them. I actually pitched these characters. It was a whole different thing. It was going to be like, I was tailoring it for them. I think we know the end of the story. They didn't pick it up. But that was the goal. And then so later when I had all these, like, I have to write this stuff. I have to write this stuff down. I kind of resurrected these characters. I don't know what my goal is with them at this point. I think just to keep just putting it out into the world and seeing what happens. I think so much of what you do is you just have to work really hard to put yourself in a position to just get lucky. And what lucky means could be, I feel lucky that I work with you guys. I feel lucky that I work with Birdcage Bottom Books on the first book. I don't know. I think just as long as I feel like as long as I'm just putting stuff out there and something's happening with it, that's my goal.
Right. JT is like so sweet. I really love him. Like the first time we had a phone call, I was like, how are you so like genuine and precious? Like that was kind of my moment, because I'm like, because like nobody in your industry is like that, it's like not that way. Like it's very like, you would think like comics publishers are more like Hollywood in their like mentality, like even the independents, which is, so I was like they're very much like all business, whereas like he's like coming at it as an artist, which like I really love.
JT Yost, I cannot say enough nice things about him. So I did the first book with him, and I can't think of a better person, because again, as you said, he's the sweetest person on earth. He knows how to get books out. He's so efficient, and it was actually similar to working with you, Elly, where it just sort of felt like we were hanging out and a book somehow magically appeared. Like
that's ideal.
He's the guy that opened the gates for me throughout my whole comic career. So and he's my closest friend in comics. We go to shows together. I cannot say enough nice things about him. He's awesome.
Oh.
Well, my question is, what are you working on now? It sounds like I'm trying to do the math from the beginning of the pandemic when you were doing a daily comic for, not necessarily a diary comic, for every day for almost For 5 years. That
For
time, that clock just ran out a few months ago. What
Yeah.
changed? What are you doing now?
So I finished a third book that I just kind of have to like hone in on and sort of like make pitchable kind of. I've got a bunch of like sort of spare stuff too. I have stuff that never didn't make it into any books. I've got like another project I was working on. I have an agent that I am working on different stuff with him and everything. I think I just hit, it was almost to the day 5 years where it's just kind of like, I'm tired, and I've got and I've got a lot of stuff in the tank that I can just, maybe I don't need to pretend there's a gun to my head. I'm just like drawing like frantically. Maybe I can just sort of use some of the stuff I already have, some of the connections I have, and relax a little bit. So there is a third book that I finished it a few months ago, and I just want to go back with fresh eyes and figure it out. I have ideas for other things, but yeah, it's sort of like a weird thing to say, but like I'm slowing down a little bit, but I think it's probably good. I think to do like a page a day, especially when the pandemic, did it end? Kind of ended. Once the world kind of like got, once I didn't have a whole day to do something, everything else in my life, I just sort of like shut it off. I was just kind of, this is my goal. I'm going to do this. And so doing that for 5 years, I'm trying not to feel bad about stopping, but it kind of feels good to relax and be a person and like,
Yeah. There's only so much time in your day. You can do one thing or another thing. And it sounds like, what you were saying about what the comic did for you during the pandemic, providing an outlet, like it turned into something that gave you more outlets, maybe.
100%. And I did it every day because I wanted to do it every day. And I was passionate about it. And I felt like this was my goal and my purpose. And so once I started thinking like this feels forced, I just I don't want to do it. I do whatever I want to do. But
knowing when to stop doing something, that's like the secret sauce right there.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Right.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that like it served a purpose for you and now it serves a purpose for its readership. And and you're very right. Like it's a huge success just to like get a book in print, because like I think about like how many people don't achieve that, for any number of reasons, especially, well, we in general, but like in comics particularly, like it's, and then everywhere you go in the world, or as a book publisher at least, people like tell you their ideas for a book, and and then you're like, there's a lot of unpublished books out there. Which is like kind of cool, in a certain sense. It's like people are like thinking creatively, and it's kind of what you want out of people, keeps them out of trouble. But so it's kind of like, do you want to throw some tantalizing nuggets out there for like what your new book is about, or what people can expect? Is it the same series, a different series? What's going on?
It's the same series, and I've done the unthinkable. Some of it's in color.
Oh boy.
No, I feel like once you sort of like do enough books, you start realizing patterns. And I think like so I've done 3, counting the one that I'm sort of, I'm considering done. But I think each one is sort of a response to the last one. And so the one that I did with you guys took me so long to do. I'm so happy with how the art came out, but some of it was a real slog, just like fixing things, making things look good. And again, it was great, but boy, it took a long time. So for this next one, it was I did a lot of freehanding, and I did a lot of, so once the first book came out, I lived at MIT for a year as a residential scholar for comics, which was a wild experience. But while I was there, I did like these kind of freestyle, off the top of my head comics for like months, and I compiled these notebooks. And then once I left MIT, I started working on a bunch of color stuff, and I barely used Photoshop at all for cleanup. It was just whatever comes off the top of my head, and so it's a lot looser, it's a lot more experimental, and I started doing something, I'm sure this is done before, but I call it like quilting storylines, where like instead of here you sort of have these like separate stories that begin and end. It's the same people but in the same world. This quilting one, it's a little bit like they lead into each other. Like there is a beginning, middle, and end, but they lead into each other, kind of like those old sketch shows, like Kids in the Hall, or I can't think of any other examples from the Monty Python, probably, like where they all sort of blend together. So that was the goal with this one, to just be totally loose and fun. And I like music a lot. I sort of consider, do you guys like the Beastie Boys? I consider it kind of like the Paul's Boutique, where it's all sort of like all the stuff is going on.
Ooh. The lesser appreciated, the lesser appreciated in its heyday, more appreciated now album. Ooh, good reference. Good reference. I was like, when you asked Beastie Boys, I'm like, well, there's many eras of Beastie Boys, and I'm like, and you picked the most interesting one.
So that was the goal with that, and it was fun doing color too, because I think these characters started off as color, and they just went into black and white just for it's cheaper, it's easier. But seeing them in full color, it's exciting. I don't know, it's cool. So I'm excited about this one. We'll see what happens with it, but it's there. So
I'm excited to see it too.
Awesome.
Well, we're just about running out of time, but do you have any final words of wisdom for the publishers, authors, and publishing curious in our audience?
I think you should buy this book. I think you should buy the horror.
Very wise words indeed.
I think you'll enjoy it. It's a good one. I think it'll help everybody out, and I think it'll help you out too. Thank you. This is an honor. I love this podcast. So it's surreal to be on it. So thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub,
on Twitter at microcosm,
on Facebook at Microcosm Publishing,
on Instagram at microcosm_pub,
and here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.
Maybe this is too long of a story. I just said we were out of time. Anyway,